Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to present Biotron to you today. Okay. Standard forward-looking statements. So Biotron is a clinical phase small molecule drug development company. We're focused on new classes of antiviral drugs to treat significant viral diseases. Our clinical programs are focused on HIV and hepatitis C, but we have earlier stage programs for a range of other viruses, including dengue. We were spun out from the Australian National University. We went straight to IPO back in January 2001, and I've been with the company since January 2002. We're headquartered in Sydney. We've had quite a good news flow over the last 12 months. This time last year, we had good positive data from our phase 2A hepatitis C trial with our 48-week follow-up data, and I'll cover each of these briefly during my presentation. Earlier this year, we had good positive data from our phase 2A HIV study. Just after mid-year, we completed a recruitment in a phase 2 study in HIV hepatitis C co-infected patients, and at the end of last week, we announced headline preliminary interim data at the 12-week time point in a trial in HIV hepatitis C co-infected patients. This slide shows our pipeline. We have three phase 2 clinical programs. Our hepatitis C programs targeting the P7 protein. We've completed a 28-day dosing 2A trial, and we're shortly to commence a 3-month dosing study in 60 patients. The HIV program, we're targeting the BPU protein of HIV. We've completed a phase 2A study. And the co-infected trial in HIV hepatitis C co-infected patients, we completed a phase 2 trial just recently. In addition to our lead program with BIT225, we have a number of next generation inhibitors for our programs that are in earlier stage development, and one particular compound that's ready to move into IND-enabling studies. And for dengue, we are targeting the M protein. We have a very interesting program that's still in the discovery stage. And as additional funds become available from our focus on our clinical programs, we'll move some of that funds into these early stage programs. 225 is a new class of direct-acting antiviral drug for hepatitis C. It's a novel compound. It is an oral drug. It's in capsule form, and it's small molecule rather than being a protein. It's the only one of its class, in other words, a P7 inhibitor that's in clinical trials. Within the hepatitis C field, there's a real focus on coming up with new compounds that work directly against the virus. The standard of care treatment is interferon and ribavirin. Interferon and ribavirin are both non-specific drugs which basically work to boost the body's immune system. They're very toxic. It's a 48-week period of treatment and associated with a high degree of side effects, and they don't work in 50% of patients. So the industry is pushing to develop drugs which work directly on the virus. The main programs are targeting polymerase and protease inhibitors, and some of those programs are going particularly well. And I guess where we fit into things is we're not a competition to them. We're looking to add in to these new classes of treatments. Antiviral drugs have to be used in combination. For chronic viral diseases, you can't use one drug on its own or you get resistance. And in fact, we know for HIV, it's not until you start getting 3 or 4 different drugs in combination that you can actually eliminate that virus. So 225 works at a later stage in the virus life cycle to the other classes of DAAs in development. So we like that as the potential if viruses become resistant to these new classes, 225 sitting there to wipe up the viruses that escape through that pathway as it's an assembly inhibitor. We know from our trials to date that it's clinically active against hard-to-treat genotype 1 as well as genotype 3, and it also doesn't readily generate resistance. We have proven clinical activity against hepatitis C. This schematic briefly shows the design of our phase 2A trial, which was patients all take 48 weeks of interferon and ribavirin. For the first 4 weeks, they took either 225 or placebo. And the interesting part from this study is when you analyse the data at the 48-week time point, and in patients who just basically took standard of care for the whole time with placebo during the first 4 weeks, 75% of those would clear a virus, whereas 100% of patients who took 4 weeks of 225 in combination at the beginning of the trial, we clear a virus at that time, at the end of the trial. And this was a really important trial for us. It was the first clear indication that 225 has good antiviral activity, in particular in these hard-to-treat, treatment-naive genotype 1 patients. In addition to focusing on patients mono-infected with hepatitis C, we're very interested in the co-infected space due to the fact our drug targets HIV and hepatitis C. Some 30% of HIV positives in the US are also infected with hepatitis C. These patients do significantly worse than the mono-infected patients. They have a lot higher rate of side effects and they progress to liver failure much more rapidly than the mono-infecteds. The trial which we have completed around mid-year was in genotypes 1 and 3. Once again, 28 days dosing interferon with interferon and ribavirin. And last week we put out interim data at the 12-week time point, which shows that 100% of the genotype 3 patients would clear a virus at that 12-week time point, and that 225 enhanced the interferon and ribavirin effect seen in these patients. And we'll be presenting additional data from this at the AASLD, the liver conference, in 1 week's time. For HIV, we have good clinical activity against HIV. People sometimes say, well, isn't HIV all over? That deal's done. What we know is patients who are well controlled on antiretrovirals, the virus is still there. If they stop taking their medication, that virus rebounds quite rapidly. The virus hides in these underlying reservoirs of infections in patients, and existing antiretrovirals have no effect on those reservoirs. What our trial has shown is that we're able to target HIV within the monocyte macrophage reservoir in these patients. And the other important component of this is that we showed that 225 can cross the blood-brain barrier. The reason why this is important is it opens up the possibility to treat AIDS-related dementia. Some 70% of HIV positives or have some form of HIV-associated neurological dysfunction, and have a drug which can target the reservoir cells in the brain which contribute to that is something that the industry is very interested in as we move towards cure and eradication strategies. So I think what I can show you is we have multiple market opportunities for HIV, hepatitis, and within the hepatitis C space. This slide, this final slide, is a summary of our financials. We currently have $3.5 million in the bank, which will fund a trial that we're shortly to start, which is a 3-month dosing study in genotypes 1 and genotype 3 for hepatitis C mono-infecteds. We have a very experienced board. We have 2 ex-J&J executives with Dennis Wade and Susan Pond, and my background is also with J&J. And Rob Thomas is very well known within the broking community and brings a particular experience to the board. Thank you.